The drama, the political theater this week at the Miami Commission had fingers pointing in lots of directions.
Did they ever? Commissioner Joe Carollo led the Inquisition-like meetings, building a case against the new police chief, but the chief struck back. He struck first with a memo alleging corruption among Carollo and the other commissioners.
In this real-life telenovela, there are subplots, there is context, and one person who might shed some authentic light on all of it is Miami's recently retired police chief, Jorge Colina, with us right there live. So great to have you. Can we just call you George now? Chief?
Yes, you can, and it's nice to be on. Thank you.
George,
So,
it's great to see you. Thank
I just
you.
want to say we are not making light of anything. This is a very serious situation. But for Miami watchers, there were a lot of eyes rolling. There were a lot of sighs. There were a lot of eyebrows raising. Kind of put this into context for us, what we've seen, which was an inquisition-like couple of meetings this week, with one commissioner in particular sort of laying out a case against the police chief with no response.
Right, and I think, it's a sad commentary that we've kind of seen this in the past, right? This level of discord. You never want to see this at the highest levels of any government leadership, but when it's your home, certainly more so. And it does leave people quite uneasy because honestly, you want everybody to focus on their jobs and doing the best they can for the community that they serve, not spending time preparing on how you're going to fight each other.
George, it was only at the end of January that you retired after 3 years as chief, 30 years with the department. So you know this department inside and out, and you have watched Chief Acevedo in the 6 months he's been on the job. He's made some mistakes, some gaffes, but has he done anything, in your opinion, that would warrant having him fired?
I don't know is the truth. From the outside, it doesn't appear like it, but we don't know what the truth is, right? I'm not in the department anymore. I don't live in the city of Miami anymore. And so certainly there have been some mistakes in terms of how you would communicate, especially strategically. It's one of the disadvantages, Michael, when you bring someone from the outside, and I'm not questioning the decision, but those are some of the things that sometimes lead to problems, not understanding a community, not understanding the politics, how to maneuver around some of these landmines that we know exist here in South Florida. I can't speak to other cities. I don't know how it was for him in Houston. But these are some of the things that happened. There was a process that was put in place that wasn't followed. So there's tinder, how much is reality and how much is, perhaps an exaggeration of what it is or being a bit hyperbolic. That's the part that really everyone is trying to figure out.
So we're talking about Miami, but there are cities all over South Florida who make hiring and firing decisions. In Miami, it's the city manager. The city manager and the mayor sort of went to Houston, plucked him, called him the Michael Jordan of police chiefs. The commission had not only no part in the hiring, but were very surprised, even though there was this internal process going on where local inter-department people were candidates for this job. And you get the sense, listening to the meeting, that this was this was poking the bear, no doubt. But the memo that the chief launched in a preemptive strike really makes some allegations against the commissioners that they interfered with investigations in the department, that they were meddling in his decisions to hire and fire. Did you, when you were police chief, have that experience with the commissioners? And several commissioners, I might say, were different then, but did you ever experience that?
Not really. And I'll put it this way. It was important to me from the very beginning. Anytime I had any conversation with any of the commissioners, and by the way, to include the mayor and the manager, it was really important to me to make sure they understood what was acceptable to me and what wasn't. It was important for me that they understood that I'm the chief of police. I'm going to make the decisions. We can speak, off camera, if you will, about it. Certainly not at commission. I was never comfortable with that. And have a discussion if someone's uncomfortable with the decision I was making. But I certainly wanted them to know I'm making the decisions here. And if I even got the idea that someone was suggesting something that made me uncomfortable, I would let them know about it. I would let them know.
Can I just follow up with that, because we have evidence that you did exactly that. There is one of the allegations against commissioners were that they were asking the police chief to do selective enforcement against a code violation, send in the city departments to bust political enemies. There is an entity on Calle Ocho, Ball and Chain, and the owners of that establishment and others filed suit this week, a federal lawsuit, and in that lawsuit is your memo from 2 years ago when you were police chief. It seems to be answering to the mayor and manager that you had been asked to do selective enforcement, and you were asking them to sort of gut check and have that and intervene so it didn't happen. Talk about that a little bit, that experience.
So this was a commission meeting where, if I recall, they had essentially through resolution directed the city attorney to essentially be the point person in these business checks, which, you know, I'm sure they felt like it was their right as legislators to put forth such a resolution. The city attorney followed those directions and forwarded locations for us to check as a task force. That already for me was uncomfortable. And again, I'm sure they felt like they were within their right. But in my opinion, that's not how the charter reads. My boss is the city manager. And that's the person who can direct me on what my duties are. But quite frankly, even the city manager, you know, I'm the law enforcement professional, right? I'm the one that's got to be able to say, that is not acceptable, or I'm not going to participate, because perception is what it's all about. I don't want anyone to think that anyone can use the police department, the mayor, the manager, any of the commissioners to think that we can go out and do their bidding. I don't want anyone to think that. And so it's important to make these statements, to be really blunt about them, to be honest, so everyone understands, because I really believe that a lot of times they don't realize what they may be asking, and it's incumbent upon the leadership, whether it's the chief or the manager or whoever, to say, hold on, let's make sure that everyone stays in their lane. Let's make sure everyone understands the separation of powers, because when they're commingled, it becomes uncomfortable, and what the public thinks really matters. Yeah. And so I have no problem with a commissioner saying, I've gotten tips that this business is functioning illegally. That's okay, but I'm not going to go check that one business. I'm going to check the one next door, the one across the street, and the one down the block. Because again, I don't want anyone to feel that we're being used or manipulated in any kind of way.
Right. Well, just to underscore your point, the Miami City Charter says that you report to the city manager, and the commissioners can express opinions, but they cannot give you or police officers a direct order. That just violates the charter. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And listen, using common sense, right? I'm completely okay with a commissioner calling and saying, I just got a tip from a constituent that they're selling drugs out of this home or there's this business. That for me is like any citizen reaching out. That's okay. It's when you get the idea that they're trying to direct you on how to do your job, or essentially giving you instructions or orders that can become uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's not kosher. Okay, George Colina, we have more questions for you, so please stay right where you are, and we'll be back with more questions for the former police chief in a minute.
All right.
We are back with former Miami Police Chief, retired Miami Police Chief George Colina, trying to put some context into what we saw at the city this week in the City Commission. George, you know, not very recently, but when Chief Acevedo first started about a month into his tenure, we were having a conversation, and I just said, hey, how's it going? You know, how do you like being the chief in Miami? And he said, you know, it's like being in the Game of Thrones. And I think at that point, he didn't really quite get how much he would think that in months to come. But why isn't he answering now with such a public thrashing? Why stay upstairs at the commission? Why not come down and answer to them?
I think it's a great question. I really do. And I don't know why. It would be difficult for me to not respond, right? And to be fair to the commissioners, right? I mean, that's their forum, and they get to ask whatever questions they want to ask. And I think Commissioner Carollo basically explained it. Hey, this is my opportunity to address some of these allegations made against me. And so he used his platform, quite frankly, to be able to do that and address some of the allegations made against him. I feel that it should be both ways, right? I feel like certainly the chief should come down. Perhaps he was told, I don't want to add fuel to this fire. It's not going to help. But I think it would have been important to hear from the chief to address some of the concerns and the allegations that were lodged against him that were also very serious. I would have liked to have heard from him as well. And I think that you can find a certain amount of civility to discuss it in a civil way, even if there's disagreement. But I think it's important for the public to hear every side of these arguments.
Yeah. We should point out for the record that we invited Chief Acevedo to be on the show today, and the answer we got late in the week to our executive producer, Tommy Fletcher, was, I am prohibited from appearing, making any appearances. So we just want to get that on the record. George, on Friday, the commission passed the strangest resolution I can think of. They hired, they're going to hire maybe a former FBI man or other detectives to come in and do an investigation, not just of Chief Acevedo, but of themselves. And then this investigator or investigators would report to them. I mean, how in the world can that happen?
Well, I understand the thought, right, that so much is being put out in the public and it's going to raise a concern. And so you want transparency and you want the truth to come out. I certainly understand that. But to your point, ultimately, I think the best way to go is to have a legitimate third party, be it the FBI or FDLE or whoever it is, to come out and conduct their own investigation where they're not reporting back to the city anything other than their findings. I think that would have been ideal. Perhaps that might still happen. You know, as you know, that the city has also an auditor general, and some of these things that are perhaps figures or facts or dates that are in question, perhaps this person can help. It's their job to try to do that independently. That's a possibility as well.
Jorge Colina, retired Miami chief, we value your time, and I guess we'll all be watching this together. So come back soon.
Thank you very much, George. Appreciate it.
Have a great Sunday.
You too.